Hey, it's Samuel Larsen here from growgurus.com, and over the years I've hired over 100 people remotely, and many of them have been e-commerce virtual assistants. So I wanted to share my learnings with you so that you can better succeed with your hiring. Maybe you're a first-time hirer, maybe you hired already several people, but this is my process that I've honed into what I think near perfection, and something that you can take and implement yourself. I think of the daily e-commerce tasks as basically beginning from 3 buckets. So you have the bucket that is something that can only be done by you, the founder, the general manager, etc. Then you have the 2 other buckets, and those are the people bucket. So these are the tasks that can be implemented by your team. And then there's the automation bucket, teams that you don't even want to be implemented by your team, but can be implemented by software, for example, automated ordering and that kind of thing. So you want to identify first whether you have enough tasks to fit into this second bucket here, that would be your team bucket, to cover a full-time person. If not, you can definitely find good part-time people as well, but you don't need to make that big jump into a full-time person right away. Because getting this far is fine, and there's that kind of good feeling you get from hiring other people, but going from 0 to 1, that's a big step. It's nothing to fear, but you better be prepared for hiring your first employee, because your life won't be the same afterward. It's something that you'll have this additional responsibility going forward. And I've gone through this multiple times myself, like going from 0 to 1 employees and failing with that 1 employee, and learned over time how to handle that. So nothing to fear. It's a natural progress, and it's actually also natural to fail at it at first. And every time I hire that VA or I hire another VA, I end up getting surprised of how much more can we achieve, how much faster we can move. And it's a big change. It's an exciting change as well. And here's how to basically do it. So first of all, I'd break this into 3 parts. So you have your pre-research, your search, and your post-hire. So pre-search is just preparing. You want to make sure that you have clear requirements, but not only that, you also have clear processes for the VA to then take on. You don't want to come into this completely blindly, where you end up on days 1 with that employee and you have nothing prepared for them. Because then that person will also look around like, okay, this is a complete mess. You want to rather prepare for it and have those processes in place, have some tutorials in place, etc., for them to start implementing their work. So before you even start, you should start building these processes out. Then the search part is the actual hiring. So this is where you are posting the job, you're doing the interview rounds, you are vetting applicants, etc. Post-hire is your onboarding and your training, etc. So that's where pre-search and post-hiring play together. And you're basically preparing for that post-hiring phase before that phase starts. Now the most important thing here first is to get clear on the actual requirements. We talked about that a little bit before, where you want to get clarity on what are the tasks to be done, jobs to be done, so to say. Now, you can think of it as a project or traditional employment, but you want to have a clear scope nevertheless. So for example, are you looking for only a graphic design VA? Are you looking for somebody to handle some of your Facebook marketing? Are you looking for somebody to write blog posts? Those are all very important things. You need to map this out to get an idea of that perfect profile. Because before you start the search, you have the option to define this. And if you define this beforehand, then it will make the search phase easier, because then you will already be able to vet these people on the actual posting. So if you tell them what the requirements are, some will self-select that, okay, I'm not a good fit here because it's an English thing, like English is not my first language, or like I'm not that good at it. So that's what you want actually. Of course you'd want the best applicants, but oftentimes it's just as good to get less applicants, because then you spend less time going through them. Now also you want to think of time zones. Do you need these people to work on US EST time, for example? Or is it fine that they work at their own time zone? You want to make that clear right away. Is it, for example, customer support role? Is it order fulfillment? Those things require quite a different person, because order fulfillment is basically just clicking buttons and making sure things go right. Whereas customer support, you need a really good English. You might want to have somebody who can talk on the phone, etc. So get clear on that. And once you've done that, you want to prepare your business. So build the systems already for them to succeed. You can think of yourself as an enabler. Don't expect them to be at your level right away. Rather, they will be starting from the process. They will be learning things as they go and starting from the ground up. Month one will probably be something that they're not that helpful. It's just the nature of these things. Like, you are investing in the long-term profitability of your business, and if somebody can come and instantly help you, that's a very rare thing. Now you also want to understand the culture that you're hiring from. So for example, if you hire a person from the Philippines, they will be thinking quite differently than a person from the United States would think of, for example. So some things might be shameful to ask, or they might behave a little bit differently. So you want to understand the culture at least a little bit before you start working with them. Now, with this as well, you are coming from the employer position. So it's important to think through that and consider how the other person is going to feel. So familiarize yourself with the situation of them, like that they might have concerns of a dog barking outside or a chicken making noise. You want to take this into account in the hiring phase and also in the interview rounds, to just make sure that it's not going to be a case where you have a very talented applicant that would have been a great fit for the position, but just happened to be that because of your interview process, they selected themselves out. So once you're there and you feel comfortable that you're ready for it, then you can start looking for the sources. So now you know what you're hiring for, you know what kind of person you're looking for, and you know like the time zones, etc. Now there's a few sources that you can look for, and I think of it as these three being the easiest to start from. So you have first of all the freelance platforms. You have Upwork.com, Freelancer.com, Fiverr, and those can be good. And oftentimes what you'll find from there are people that are more in the gig economy. So in my view, it's good to find people for short-term things, but then you're not necessarily optimizing for that long-term collaboration, because these are people that are also there building their profiles, and then they might get offers for other things, and they might be also already comparing yourself to the offers, like, okay, maybe this pays $4 an hour, but this other person like here could pay $6 an hour, and suddenly they start working with you less, and their attention just drifts away. So I wouldn't recommend this if you are looking for a full-time person, but there's definitely full-time people that have been found from these platforms as well, and it has been successful. When I think of full-time people, I think of the long-term platforms. These are job boards that have people looking for long-term stable jobs. And a good example here would be onlinejobs.ph, where you can hire talent from the Philippines. But there's plenty of others. And good thing here is that they can be quite localized, and they can be quite specific as well. So if you're looking for graphic design talent, there's a job board for that, etc. Another thing that can be very specific and good for long-term hires as well is Facebook groups. Because here you have people that are already in a group, like let's say it's graphic design, and then those people are saying, okay, I am interested in this, and then they might be open to gigs on that. And not only gigs, but also long-term work. Because many of these people, they are hobbyists, but they would want to be full-time employed in their respective niche. So those are the sources, the 3 buckets of sources: freelance platforms, long-term platforms or job boards, and Facebook groups. There are some others as well, so don't limit yourself to these, but if you do these 3 sources, you should be able to get a good list of applicants. So you have the sources. Now you want to think of your hiring post structure. And think of it as an advertisement for the absolute top best applicant that you want to attract. So just like they are selling themselves, you're also selling yourself, especially for an applicant that has other options. So here you're not writing it for the worst applicants, trying to qualify them and see if they're okay, but rather for the best ones. So I'll cover these things here on a typical application or a job post. First of all, they want to know what they'll be able to do. So what is the job description here? What are the tasks, and what is the whole of the job? So I'll list those, and this is a good opportunity for them to self-select early. So if they don't have any experience on graphic design, most will just skip on. Second thing, now you're selling the benefit. So I'll list things of what they'll actually get. So for me, it's flexible work hours. It's investing into their education. I'll make sure that they have a positive culture, and will support their learning. Those kind of things. So that's definitely a good thing for the remote jobs, is that right now at least it's something that people really are looking forward to. Then you want to list the absolute right candidate you're looking for. So that's after what you'll do, what you'll get, and then you talk a little bit about what you want in terms of requirements. Here, I wouldn't list like necessarily years of experience, because that's such a vague term, but they should have skills on these areas or demonstratable skills, etc. So it's good to put those requirements out there. And here, of course, the more specific you want to go, the less your applicants you're going to get. Then the last thing here is the work hours. Okay, so do you need them to work on a specific time, or is it more flexible? And then also how to get started. So what are the first steps? Plus, people differ a little bit here whether they want to include it or not, but I'll also like to include a salary range, just so that it's clear for the applicants as well. So that, like, sometimes you might get like people expecting way more from a virtual assistant position that you were thinking of paying. So you're kind of weighing those out as well. Plus, it can also motivate people to go through your hiring process if they think that, okay, the salary is actually worth it. So it works both ways actually. Now, that's your hiring post. And once you do that, you'd probably want to wait around 7 days at least to make sure that you get all the people. You don't need to rush here, but then you'll move into the vetting applicants phase. So typically I just send them an invitation link where they can book a call with me for the first talk. And I frame it as we can check if it's a mutual fit or not, rather than a strict interview that they would need to perform well at. It's important to put people at ease, especially for virtual assistant position, because it's not going to be a very high pressure position anyway, so you don't necessarily need them to be super stress tolerant. Then vetting applicants. So you'll get a list of applicants. Hopefully you'll get at least, I'd say, 30 people applying, and then I recommend getting that list down to 4 or 5 people. Do this before the interviews. So you'll only spend time with the ones that you're actually interested in. And this is also respectful for the candidates, but it's mostly for your own time. If you have done the job posting well, you should not have issues with finding good people to interview. Now, typically I recommend to also do a test task. So you can do this before or after. My preference is after, because then you can bring it up on the call and it's easier to sell the best applicants to it. And I prefer to pay for it, because that's also where you're looking to have the best applicants be motivated. And also fair. So you treat people fair, they tend to be more loyal, and that's what you're after. Now, very important that the interview and the test task should also reflect the job. The test task typically is 1 to 2 hours, something small, and you can get an idea pretty fast. The interview itself, I do 2 interviews in my process. First is a little bit more casual, and second is more of a deep dive after the test. And this can be also via text. It doesn't need to be via phone, it doesn't need to be via video, because if you are looking for the person to only do text writing, then you're actually kind of putting them in a position that they wouldn't be. So it's suboptimal in that sense. And with interviews, very important to make sure that they're comfortable. Try to stay as objective as possible. Don't just hire people who interview well, because that's not necessarily a skill that you will need from a virtual assistant. And I'd also say that the test itself should matter at least 50%, depending on how well that test is structured. But you should structure your test so that you can trust the results. You've probably found that applicants by now. Rest is pretty simple. I'd say you want to have some kind of contract where you outline what are their responsibilities, what you're expecting from them, just so that everything's on paper. This doesn't need to be complicated at all. It can be 1 or 2 pages, and then you have it official. For VAs, I typically pay them twice a month, 1st and 15th of the month, so that they get that nice frequency of payments if they have any ongoing needs. Also, as a side note, I always encourage the VAs to save up, just so that if something goes wrong, and it eventually will, like there's a hurricane or computer breaks, etc., they'll have the funds to go and fix it. For the first month, I recommend that you do half pay, half work, just to vet that it's a mutual fit. As good as your interviews are, as good as your test tasks are, there's going to be surprises. So if you do that, you're going to find out whether it's a good mutual fit. And 1 month is not such a long time that you couldn't go back to the other applicants and see if you want to go for someone else. One thing you could also do is do half-half with 2 applicants. If you want to do that, then you can separate the tasks a little bit and see which one ends up being the better one. It's definitely worth it in terms of paying that cost early, because then you're looking for a VA that will stay with you for a year, 2 years, 5 years ideally. So if you do that well, you should have people that are loyal and that people that you can trust. And you'll have that consistent performance from them. Now, after that, once you start with the hiring, once you've done the hiring, you should have your documentation ready for them to take it on. So have Loom videos, written processes, etc. And then have the daily call with them just to check up, because otherwise they may not ask the questions. They don't want to embarrass themselves or appear like they don't know what they're doing. So important to dig it out, especially early, what could be the problems, what can be improved, etc. Then keep in mind the culture. Be patient and understanding at first, but don't be patient and understanding forever. You don't hire them to fire them right away, but you also should expect them to up their game as things progress. So it should be up and to the right in terms of performance rather than flatlining. So they should be able to take on more responsibility, get into better roles, and elevate their career also within your organization. That's it. Thank you very much for watching. Make sure to subscribe for the channel and like the channel or the video for the YouTube algorithm as well. Will help you mostly for getting better content to your feeds, and will motivate me as well to provide this content for you as well. Hope you enjoyed it. Good luck with your first hires, and take care.